Hey, this is Scott photography Banzai. In this video, we'll be going over this Tamron 18-400mm f3.5-6.3 II VC HLD Lens. Thanks to Cameracraft in Rockford, Illinois for letting me try this out at their shop. So as you can tell from the focal length range, this is an extremely long lens. Got the full wide field of view, but also very long telephoto. So the big appeal to this lens is the size and the focal length range, also the price. It is aps-c only. However, I did try this lens out on my Nikon D750, so I did try it a little bit in the full frame mode. On the long end, the equivalent focal length is 620mm, so you have a huge amount of telephoto range on it. Minimum focus distance, 0.45 meters or 17.7 inches. So definitely not ideal in that case, but I think it's manageable, especially considering the focal length range. Filter size, 72mm, pretty standard. Won't have any issues finding filters for this lens. It does have image stabilization at 2.5 stops. Again, not ideal, but definitely good to have some type of stabilization with this lens and aperture sizes. Tamron says it has moisture resistance. I don't know what that means exactly, but it is nice to have potentially some seals to keep water out. The minimum aperture is between f22 and f40 depending on your focal length at the time. It does have 7 aperture blades. They say it's circular. I really didn't look into detail on the aperture. The maximum magnification ratio is 1 to 2.9. Again, not ideal for macro work, but it could be used a little bit in those cases. Big thing about this lens is how compact it is when you're traveling versus amount of focal length range that it gives you. It's about 4.8 inches long at 18 millimeters, so that's the most compact size it can get. Pretty nice in that case. You can easily fit it in almost any camera bag that will hold your DSLR. When the lens is fully extended, probably at least double the length. I didn't measure it, but definitely a very long lens when it is at the 400 millimeters. Holding the lens, build quality feels solid. Plastics are nice. I didn't notice any issues with the build quality as I was trying it out. The zoom ring obviously has to be rotated quite a bit to go through the full range. It was pretty tight on this lens. I think in time maybe it'll loosen up a bit, but I do think it's better to have the lens a little difficult to change the zoom, at least initially. That way, probably in the future, it won't be bad. There was a specific spot that was extra tight when I'm rotating it for zoom. Again, not ideal, but the lens does have a zoom ring lock. It only works at 18 millimeters. It's there just for traveling for the most part. You lock it down when it's in your bag so it doesn't extend accidentally. It also has the AF/MF switch and the VC on-off switch. You can buy Tamron's tap-in console thing that hooks up to the lens, allows you to update the firmware and make adjustments like autofocus. Pretty nice option in that case. As I was using the lens, autofocus felt pretty decent. I wouldn't say it's the quickest I've used, but I didn't notice any huge issues with autofocus. It was really cold out. I didn't get a ton of time trying it out, but worked relatively well. I'd say it's nice for, again, this lens that has a lot of compromise versus versatility. I didn't really notice any issues with the sound of autofocusing either. It's very quiet. As I said before, I tested this lens with my Nikon D750. I initially had it in FX mode. You could see it definitely does not fill the full frame. So I'm trying out this Tamron 18-400 on the D750. Of course, it is not a full frame lens, so just keep that in mind. First, this is with shake reduction on. We're at the full 18 millimeters. Shake reduction is turned off. So I'm not even sure if it would do anything in this case or not. We'll have to see. Again with the Tamron. Let's do some zooming. So what's the point of this lens? The point is to have a huge focal length range at a relatively decent price and a smaller form factor. You lose out on the aperture side of things, and you lose out on the minimum focus distance, but besides that, you have a decent lens in a small package. Now it's up to you if you want to have compromises in those areas. I'm not going to comment on image quality. You can look at the sample photos and decide for yourself. I could see it being a nice lens for various situations where you just want one lens, don't want to change lenses out in certain situations, especially with the weather resistance that it potentially has. That's what they say, at least. It can be a good option in that case. So that was the Tamron 18-400mm lens for aps-c cameras. Again, thanks to Cameracraft in Rockford, Illinois for letting me try this out at their shop, and especially for allowing me to take it out and take a few sample photos for all of you. I'm Scott from Photography Banzai. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. That really helps me out. Of course, the thumbs up and the shares help out a lot as well. Thanks again.